Hey, what's up, folks? This is a long overdue follow-up on my Q-Power scooter that I had a problem with the original battery cutting out. The problem I was having is the scooter would run fine, but the capacity of my battery was slowly dropping. So it finally got to the point where riding this thing the way I want to ride it with dual motors, pretty fast, I could only get about 6 miles before all power would cut off on the scooter. Last video I did on this, I showed how I determined it was the battery. I ordered a new battery. That was about 9 months ago. I've had the battery installed in the scooter, my new battery now, for about 7 months, and everything's great so far with it. So here's a side-by-side comparison. This is the old battery, 60 volt, 26 amp hour. Here's the new one, also 60 volt, but 35 amp hour, and it also has the rest of the spec written here. 70 amp standard current, or that's what you'd call continuous current, 70 amp. Current charge rate, 5 amps. You can charge up to 5 amps, which is quicker than the standard charger. 4,000 watt, that's irrelevant. And the size, dimensions of the battery, 365 by 153 by 76 millimeters. You can see there's not a lot of room there. I had to take into account the controller sizes, all my wiring. I got some LED stuff, some DC converters in here, so it's taking up a little more room. If you just had the 235 amp controllers, this fits really nice. If you had the bigger 40 amp controllers, which are larger, I think you could probably still do it. It would be really tight with the wiring and everything. I had this battery custom made by a manufacturer on Alibaba. And so it's got the two XT60 output plugs which go to your controllers. And I only had it wired for one charge port because I'm using a 5 amp charger, so I can't, I can only use one charger anyway. The dual charge ports were for lower amperage chargers, like two 2 amp chargers. So anyway, since I'm running one 5 amp charger, I just got rid of one of my charge ports, so I'm only running one charge port to the battery. So after I first put the battery in, I did a bunch of tests where I wrote it down to 52 volts without it cutting off at all, so that's good. That's what I should do. Probably go a little bit lower, but personally I don't want to risk going that low. It's always better to not ride your scooter until it just shuts off on its own. It's possible you could stress something on the battery or the BMS circuit where it could cause problems later, so it's best just to stay away from such a low voltage where the scooter shuts off on its own. 60 volt nominal battery like this, 51 volts would be the absolute lowest I would ever go on it. You could probably actually go down to 48, I think, but you're pushing it at that point, risking damaging your battery at some point. Took care of the problem I was having. Scooter runs great again. Have a lot more range and ability to hold top speed with a bigger capacity battery. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with that. Batteries aren't cheap. This one cost me about $700, and that was about 9 months ago. It does come with a 5 amp charger as well, and that charger itself is worth probably about 80 bucks. So there's that too. So basically, again, it comes with that charger. As far as the ports go, the two XT60 plugs for the outputs and a single, basically all you need is a set of wires coming out for the charge port. The reason for that is you just, at that point, can just find your charge port, one of them on the outside, find the wires coming on the inside, and then just disconnect the old plug from your old battery, the charge port, and then splice down to this one so it can plug right back onto this. One thing to note, when you're cutting through the wires, if you do that to cut off the old port off your old battery, there's still power on that those wires. So don't cut through both wires at the same time. You go short the two wires. Find the black wire, find the red wire, cut one, and then cut the other and make sure they don't touch at all. Here's the seller, the manufacturer of this battery. Again, they're on Alibaba. Get the Alibaba app and then contacting these guys, Shenzhen Believe Technology Company Ltd. I'll leave a link down in the comments there for them. And then basically what you do is you go on their site here on Alibaba. I would do a send inquiry right there and tell them specifically what you need. They will custom make a battery for you with whatever specifications you need and dimensions. So that's what I did for this battery. I gave them the size I needed. I measured up to this point. I figured I had enough room for my controller so I could get a little bit more amp hour capacity. The rest of the specs here, 60 volt, you want 60 volt for the scooter. Actually, you could overvolt it and go higher if you want, but for me, this is fast enough. Capacity 35 amp hours. So this would be what you would need to tell them. Your nominal voltage, 60 volts, your amp hour capacity, and basically the way I did it, I gave them my dimensions and told them I want as much amp hour capacity as you can fit in those dimensions, and it ended up being 35 amp hour. So that worked out pretty good. Standard working current, also known as constant current output, 70 amps. You want that to match what your controllers are. So I have two 35 amp controllers in the scooter. 35 times 2 is 70. So two 35 amp controllers, I need 70 amps constant current or standard current from this battery to run those things at their rating. Now, if you have 40 amp controllers, you'd want that to be 80 amps. If you had 45 amp controllers, you'd want that to be 90 amps. And that, again, is your standard working current, also known as constant current. Okay, so that's very important. You could use this battery with 40 amp controllers or 45 amp controllers, but the battery's only going to get each controller 35 amp max, so you're not really utilizing the full amperage of that controller. Then it's going to be a 5 amp charge port. It's going to be that anyway, regardless. And then your dimensions, which is very important. You need to measure wherever you're putting this battery. In my case, it was the chassis of the Q-Power. You need to measure how much room you have, and also I would recommend leaving 5 millimeters each dimension for fudge room, because these things aren't always exact and they could be off by 2 or 3 millimeters. It's kind of depending on you, the information you give them. Again, 2 output ports with XT60 connectors, and then 1 set of wires, a black and red wire for your charge port, which you're going to splice into your existing charge port. They might ask you what kind of connector do you want on the charge wires. I just tell them no connector. I'll put my own connector on, which is the one I cut off the old battery and put onto here. So again, Shenzhen Believe Technology Company Ltd. I've had them make the 60 volt battery for me, plus I've had them make 3 52 volt batteries for my Q1s. I've had nothing but great success with all of them. Okay, until next time guys, take care, safe riding.